I remember getting home and seeing my belated Christmas present, which was a pirate ship from Playmobil, which is a brand kind of like Lego, but not exactly. And I remember getting home and seeing this and turning around at my mum and dad being like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever got. The best thing that's ever happened to me. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another chit chat, another conversation with me and my mate Steve. So, Steve, how's it going? How's life?
Life's really hectic at the moment, Lewis. Thanks for asking. I've got a lot of irons in the fire. I know you like these little phrases, these little idioms. I've got a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of things happening at once. How are you? You're wearing a t-shirt, so I'm guessing it's a little warmer where you are than where I am.
Well, it's weird because it's not like hot. I think today it's like 16 degrees, 17 degrees and sunny, so it's good. I'm grateful for the weather at the moment. But I think it's partly just because, I get hot very quickly and very easily. And living at the top of a building, heat rises. So in my flat, it's never that cold, which is a problem when it is actually very hot, when you've got a heat wave. My flat ends up being like a little oven. So luckily it's only 16, 17 degrees. And yeah, I'm all good. Life is a little bit hectic for me as well too, but I cannot complain. Everything is going just swimmingly. Everything is going really well.
It's hunky-dory.
There we go. Everything is smooth sailing.
Enough now, enough of them.
I know, we are unbearable with all of these expressions and idioms and so on. And let's get straight into today's topic, which is all about memories. So we're going to be sharing some of our memories from childhood, teenage years, becoming an adult, work memories, and so on and so forth. But before we get into that, Steve, how is your memory? Are you good at memorizing things? And do you remember a lot of details from your time growing up?
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Dun, dun, dun.
Um, I've got a terrible memory. I've always had a terrible memory. It's not that I'm getting older. I've always had a terrible memory, really. Sometimes I walk into a room and I forget why I've gone into that room.
Oh,
And
wow.
what's really bad, sometimes that room's the bathroom.
It's like, well, now I'm here. I might as well.
Yeah, I'm what you call face blind. I don't know if you know that expression, where I've got a good memory for some things. For trivia, I'm very good. I'm very good at quizzes. Go to a pub quiz or watch a TV quiz. I'm very good at that because I'm very good at remembering trivia, things that are unimportant. But I'm absolutely rubbish when it comes to recognizing people's faces, particularly if it's out of context. So if I go and buy a newspaper every day from the corner shop, and I have a little chat with the man behind the counter, and I know his name's Pete and his wife's called Ethel, and they've got a dog, and I see Pete out of context, say in the chip shop buying his tea, I would ignore him totally. My eyes, my brain just doesn't take in that face and associate it with that name. So I get lots of people coming up to me saying, "Hi, Steve, how are you?" And I'm, "Hello, mate. Hello, love. How are you?" And as soon as I say that, I don't know what your name is.
And if that happens to you, what do you do? Do you ask any specific questions to try and like spark your memory, to jog
Oh,
your memory?
no, I just try and get away really quickly.
It's like, okay, nice seeing you. Well, lovely to catch up. Oh, all right, ta-ra, bye-bye.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. And I call them things like, "Oh, fancy seeing you here. Oh, say it. Say hello to your family for me." For all I know, their family have all died in a road crash last month. I don't know.
It
And then afterwards, whoever I'm with will say to me, "You have no idea who that was." Yeah, no. Oh, we went on holiday with them 2 years ago. Oh, did we? Oh, yeah, I remember that. I'm just shocking. It's called face blind, and it's a real condition, and I definitely have it.
it sounds like if you keep doing this, at some point it's gonna catch up with you. At some point, you're gonna get caught out. And then you're gonna say, "Ah, tell me about your family." And then the
Yeah.
other person might just turn around and be like, "Steve, I told you that my parents died in a tragic event last week. How dare you ask me this
Yeah,
question?" But hey,
yeah.
if it's working out for you at the moment, then perfect. Long may it continue.
There's nothing I can do about it. There genuinely isn't. I I haven't got it in me to say, "I'm sorry, I don't remember who you are," in case they were my best friend at school or something, or my neighbor. Uh, "Who are you?" Yeah, I'm just terrible with it.
You see, I might do what you do sometimes, but then I think I'd freeze a little bit, and I'd be like, "Oh, and I'd be hesitating, I'd be pausing, I'd be like, "I'm really sorry," and I'd come clean, so I'd confess that I don't remember them, and I'd be like, "Okay, I feel awful, I feel dreadful, I feel so ashamed of myself, but I don't quite remember you, so, what was your name again?" And I'd be so apologetic, but I think I would end up coming clean because honesty is the best policy.
Um, yeah, I'm sure you're absolutely right. No, I'll carry on just the way I've been doing it all my life. There's nothing I can do about it. People who know me and love me know that's exactly what I'm like. So
They'll let
they
you off, you know, they will
they
forgive you. And it's interesting because my memory is kind of the opposite, where I'm really good at like knowing who someone is just from seeing an image of them. And if I'm walking around in the street and I see someone out of the corner of my eye, the other side of the road, I'll be like, "Ah, that's what's his face, isn't it?
wow,
That's what's his name." And usually I'm good at remembering faces and names not always, but usually it comes to me after a while. And this is something I try to practice with different students, in particular group classes, where I'll try to repeat in my head their name, where they're from, what they do. So then I can kind of show off a little bit and boast a little bit by asking them a question about something they tell me.
wow,
But that's a big strength of mine, and I admit it, I recognize it. But then with trivia, I'm the complete opposite. Like, I don't remember all of these random facts, random information. And if people will be talking to me about historical events or talking to me about series and trying to memorize lyrics and lines, I'll just be like, "Oh yeah, it rings a bell. It sounds familiar, but I don't really know." So I'll like half lie by saying that I recognize something when maybe I don't remember it at all. So our memories are complete opposites.
right. I'm not very good at lyrics. I used to perform quite regularly as a singer, guitarist, and oh, I had a set list that was maybe 50 to 80 songs that I could choose from that I would perform. And I might be singing one song every night for 2 weeks. And then I go to sing it, and halfway through, every single lyric is totally gone. That's when I turn the microphone back. You sing it for me. And the crowd's singing around thinking, oh, that's how it goes.
Huh?
So, yeah.
That's a good trick. It's a good trick. Perfect. So now we've clarified how good or bad our memories are. let's get into our first memories. So, Steve, I'll ask you first. What are some of the, I don't know, most impactful, biggest, most significant memories that you remember of growing up as a little baby, a toddler, or a young child?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Right, good one. I remember because my parents worked such long hours, both of them. We didn't have much family time, except for camping. So once a year, we would all go camping. So some of my earliest memories, even as a baby, as a toddler, um, my dad had a van, and he converted it into a camper van because there was how many was there was six of us. So he turned it into a camper van himself. He cut windows in the side of the van, and he he was very clever with woodwork. So he made little bench seats that turned into beds and things like that. And we packed some tents, and away we'd go. Um, and we'd only go to Wales really, but that was the highlight for me. That was the highlight because I got time with my mum and dad and my family. Whereas the rest of the time, I was pretty much left to my own devices.
Hmm.
I lived on the banks of the Mersey, literally on the banks. You could throw a small pebble from my front door and it would land in the Mersey. So, and they had a little beach there. Call it a beach. There was a strip of sand. So me and my friends would play down there. It was a good place to be. No cars, no traffic. It was quiet, and we could play there. So yeah, camping is probably my number one childhood memory, family childhood memory, I would say. What you?
I mean, I've got a
Oh,
couple.
go on.
Yeah, a couple of big ones. I'd say one that really sticks out that is very memorable for me is arriving home after being in Australia with my family because my mum and dad won a trip to Australia. And I didn't
Wow.
realize that they had,
How? No, you can't go past that. How did they win a trip to Australia?
it was one of these typical things where you'll be watching TV and then you'll call in and
Yeah.
say, like, oh, yeah, I think this is the answer, or I think that that is the correct response. And they called in. I don't remember any of this, but this is what they've told me, that they called in and they won the trip for the entire family to go to Australia for, I think it was 3 weeks. So I was at the time maybe 2 or 3 years old. My
Right.
parents obviously were over the moon. They were absolutely buzzing because these things usually don't happen,
Of
but
course.
they got really lucky and they won one of these trips. And it just so happened that my uncle was living out in Australia at the same time in Brisbane because he emigrated and moved from London to Brisbane when he was in his mid 20s. So it was perfect. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe how lucky we got. So we went to Australia as a family for a few weeks. All of this is a bit of a blur. I don't really remember anything we did in Australia, but we've got photos of me on the beach holding a koala, all of these amazing life changing things. But of course, I was 2, 3 years old. But I remember getting home, and we got home, I think, just after Christmas. And waiting for me in the lounge in the living room was a Playmobil pirate ship. And I don't remember everything I did in Australia, but I remember getting home and seeing my belated Christmas present, which was a pirate ship from Playmobil, which is a brand kind of like Lego, but not exactly. And I remember getting home and seeing this and turning around at my mum and dad, being like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever got. The best thing that's ever happened to me. So I remember this particular Christmas present being like maybe the first memory that actually sticks out and stays with me.
That's
Why?
one.
I don't know, but it's unforgettable. Absolutely unforgettable.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
that's. I'm trying to think of a memorable present. First bike, probably. Yeah, it's similar, but that's a shame you weren't a little bit older, just a few years older when you went to Australia, so you'd have more of a memory of it. But what a wonderful experience.
absolutely. I mean, everything happened at once. It was like winning the lottery all at once. And my
Yeah,
sister, who's 2.5 years older than me, she will remember it a little bit better. And of
yeah,
course, when I look at photos, I think, ah, amazing, that looks
yeah.
great. But I don't actually remember it myself. And it's a shame. I think this is a little bit sad when memories do fade away, because I'm sure there will be other things that now I remember, but maybe in a few years I'll be like, oh, really? Did that happen? Huh, I had completely forgotten about it. That's life. But
Yeah.
you mentioned a bike is maybe the present that you remember the most. So, do
Hmm.
you remember learning how to ride a bike?
I was quite, I was quite old, I think. I used to have a trike. I remember riding round the streets on my little trike when I was little.
Oh,
Tiny. Yeah. It had a little metal compartment at the back that you could put your things in and then you'd be on your trike. Um, but actually, a bicycle, um, I think I was probably about 8, maybe 9 before I learned to ride a bike. I remember mum running alongside, holding the back of the seat, and then saying, I won't let go, and then letting go. And um, but oh, vaguely, it's on the distant part of my memory. So that's yeah, it's probably nearly 60 years ago. So no, not really. What about you? Do you remember learning to ride? Who taught you to ride a bike?
well, my dad's obsessed with cycling and he still goes cycling now. It's his biggest passion and hobby. So I do remember this quite a lot, which is why I asked you this question, because I remember being in our first house before we moved and just being outside of the garage and my sister, who again is a little bit older, cycling around the neighborhood and me being really jealous, really envious. Like, oh, come on, I want to do that. Like, she's getting away from me. So I remember being very, very stubborn about trying to learn how to do it. And of course, before then, I was using stabilizers to keep the bike stable and prevent me from falling over from one side or the other. And I vaguely remember the moment and feeling of like looking around and being like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm riding on my own. And I don't think I fell off the bike. So, yes.
Yeah.
So, moving on to other memories. What about at school? Whether it's primary school or secondary school, do you have any distinct memories of events or moments that happened that you'd like to share with us?
I remember in my first school, we it was a primary junior school, so infants, juniors rather. So from 5 years of age up to I think it was about 11, we stayed in the same school, and it was it was an old Victorian school, and it looked like an old Victorian school. If you saw pictures of it, you wouldn't believe it actually was a real school. But of course, at that time, I didn't think any about thing about it. And I used to get taken out of the class every month to be given tests. And I remember the tests. I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I would sit in the headmistress's office, Mrs. McFarland,
Good memory.
and yeah, there you go. I remember her name, and they were like IQ tests. Like if you would it would be a picture of men fishing, and it was all the lines were tangled, which man has caught the fish, or it was that type of thing.
Mhm.
And I never got to the bottom of why they did it. None of the other children went, so either they thought I was very stupid or I was very clever. But nothing ever came of it. So, but I remember being taken out. Um, when you went to school, could you read?
It's something I've never really asked myself, but I don't think I could read when I started school, if that's
Right.
what you mean. But I think was able to read when I was maybe like 5 or 6, maybe. But this is just me estimating.
I because I had older brothers and sisters, well, an older brother and sisters, they taught me to read, and I was quite a good reader. I've always been a good reader. I devoured books, and so I went into school reading at a really good level, I think. And I've always been moderately bright, so I was quite good. And in the first, as soon as we walked in, w- they were doing an experiment. It was called ITA. You can look it up on Google if anyone's interested. It stands for the initial training alphabet or the initial teaching alphabet. And it was the latest thing from America. This idea that instead of learning English letters and spelling, we would learn these strange symbols. So lamb would be spelt with a two L syllable and symbol and no B on the end, but two M's. And oh, it's a strange thing. So of course I could already read, I could already spell, and then I had to stop that, and I was given these ITA books to learn. It was like learning a new language almost. In terms of reading and writing, I used to take them home, and my parents and siblings would look and say, "That's not how you spell that." I said, "Well, no, that is how I spell it." Steve was spelt with a double E syllable, and it was
Right.
simple, and it was like, "That's not how I spell my name." Yes, it is. Well, that went on for 2 years, the ITA experiment, before it was abandoned because it was rubbish, and they stopped it. So I blame that totally for just how poor my spelling is now, and I have terrible spelling of English words, and I put it down to the fact that I was okay at spelling. They experimented with me, and then I had to go back and start to learn to read and write.
They ruined your education by the sounds of
Yeah.
it.
It's shocking. Yeah, as I say, you can look it up. ITA, it was an experiment that happened in the 60s. Where I think pretty well every British school child went through it. It was awful.
Well, at least they came to their senses and realized that it was time to
In
cancel it as
time for you.
awful. Yeah, exactly. And on that note, it's funny because when I was back home for Easter, I was reminiscing with my friends from school, and I'm lucky that all of my best mates now are my best mates that I made when I was at primary school, secondary school, and we've
Wow.
stayed in touch. So I'm very fortunate for that.
Yeah.
And we met up in Leeds, went for a night out, and then there was a point in the night where we were like talking about primary school. We were reminiscing. And I was with my friend Jack, and I remember at school, me and Jack being sat next to each other when we had these spelling tests. In
Cool.
America, they call them spelling bees. And I remember that I was always quite good at spelling. I was terrible at maths, terrible at science, but quite good at like language related things and sports. And I remember it'd always be me and Jack battling it out. We'd be competing against each other. And Jack wasn't particularly bright at other things, but for some reason, he was a genius when it came to spelling. So we'd always be getting like 9 out of 10 or similar. And then he'd always just pip me. He'd just pip me to the post. He'd always just beat me. So we were reminiscing about spelling the other week and we were quizzing him as well. Like, okay, Jack, are you still good at spelling? Let's find out. How do you spell miscellaneous? How do you spell aesthetic? How do you spell this and that and the other? And then when we were reminiscing, another mate reminded us that whilst this was happening, there was always another kid in class who was sat at the other side of the classroom. And he was notorious for picking his nose with his
No.
little fingers, both little fingers at the same time, really getting in there deep. And then he'd
No,
immediately put one
don't
into
do
his mouth.
this.
And this
Why
is
why would you say that? Stop
something
it.
it's something I mentioned before on the podcast as one of my memories, and it's really stuck with me. That I'm not going to name and shame him, but he'd always be there, picking his nose, then eating it. And this would all be happening whilst we're having the spelling test. So he was he was in his zone. So that is a big memory from school.
Oh
Absolutely.
my goodness. Oh my goodness me.
Oh my
Um,
goodness, you're going to be having nightmares now.
I used to always get in trouble at school for talking. You know me, I'm a talker. And it used to drive the teachers crazy because I was always bright. So I I would be chatting away or looking out the window, and then the teacher would shout at me and say, "So tell me the answer to this then." And I would have been listening, or it was too easy, and I'd turn around and give them the right answer. They
Oh,
hated that. They absolutely hated it. And they were the days when um, corporal punishment was allowed. So
okay.
some teachers had sticks, some had rulers, some had shoes, some had board dusters they would beat you with. So, I used to get that a lot.
Ugh. I mean, it's rough. And to think about it now, times have definitely changed in this aspect for the better.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You used to have people who would be arrested now who were teachers, and they would walk around with sticks, bending the stick, looking for anything at all, any excuse to give a child a whack. It, they should have been arrested. There was something crazy about them.
Yeah, I know. Well, we move forward in this aspect. Luckily.
Yes.
Come on. Now, let's keep moving forward as well with our memories and staying at school more or less, but like high school, grammar school, secondary school, and becoming a teenager and becoming a very young adult. So, bringing up Jack again, and he's the guy who was a really good speller. I remember vividly, very clearly, when we were like 14 or 15, that we weren't exactly in the cool group of friends at school, but we weren't exactly nerds or geeks. We were kind of in the middle. But we were noticing that a lot of other people in the so called cool group were starting to have like house parties and they were starting to meet up and they were starting to get with girls and all of these things. And I remember a summer break, summer holidays, where we were in a park on the swings having a bit of a heart to heart and saying, like, okay, next year at school, should we try and get in with the cool kids? Should we try and start going to these house parties? And it sounds very kind of immature and childish, but I remember we had this kind of conversation and we made it happen. We started then getting invited to different parties, started drinking for the first time, getting a little bit drunk. And this is another thing that I don't know why exactly, but I remember it very clearly that we had a heart to heart saying, this year we should try, start speaking to girls and stop playing on the Xbox so much. And it happened. We became maybe not the coolest, but we joined the group of people who had a social life outside of school. So that's one of
Yeah.
my memories from becoming a teenager. How about you?
Um, you must remember, I went to an all boys grammar school.
Oh,
There was no cool kids in my school. We had no idea what a girl was. It was an awful thing. They should be abolished. Just when, at the time when you're changing, you're getting an interest in the opposite sex, we'll take away the opposite sex. It was an awful time for me. I didn't enjoy school. People say, "Oh, I had a brilliant teacher." Well, I didn't. Yeah, I had the best years of your life. That's what they say in England, isn't it? School, the best years of your life. My worst. No, happy to forget school. To be honest, it wasn't for me.
and
Um,
outside of school during the same period of time, do you remember going to parties or some kind of events like that?
Strangely enough, we had a local nightclub in a place called New Brighton. I'm guessing if you went to Liverpool University, you might know New Brighton.
I don't think I've been, but I know where it is, yes.
Right. It's across the water from Liverpool.
Hmm.
And there was a nightclub. It's been changed into flats now, but it was called the Chelsea Reach, and it was like a rite of passage. And you were supposed to be 18 to get in, but you comfortably could go there at age 16. And finally, there was girls and alcohol, and life was good. Chelsea reached for everyone of my age in my area. Oh, that was the place to go. Um, and the music at that time, of course, it was disco. It was 70s. So it was disco. So everyone had the big shoes and the big trousers and the black shirts. John Travolta was out doing the staying alive business. So that's the era that I lived in. We did our version of that. Pathetically, but that's my memories of that type of thing in my teens.
Staying alive, staying alive.
That's the one.
Oh, it's a classic. It's a tune. It's a banger. Absolutely. Now, moving forward a little bit to becoming 18 and becoming officially an adult. Um, to be honest, I think that for my 18th birthday, my parents agreed to go out and allow me to have a house party. And I'm lucky, I guess, that from being 13, 14, Facebook then came into existence. So I remember all of my teenage years very well because I have photographic evidence, which will again jog my memory and spark my memory. So I remember lots of these like fancy dress parties or birthday parties or proms at school because I can see the images and then it all comes flooding back. But speaking about becoming an adult, for my 18th birthday, I had a house party. I invited lots of friends, everybody from school, my mum and dad. I don't think they stayed somewhere else overnight, but they agreed to go out and come back around midnight. And by midnight, everybody should have left. And during this night, something hilarious happened with a guy whose name is Andrew. And he was always a bit gifted and talented at school as well. So he would get straight A's despite not studying that much. But then when he'd get drunk, he'd be a completely different person who wouldn't remember anything and he would switch completely. And at my house for my 18th birthday, he somehow locked himself in the upstairs bathroom. And how he did it, I'm not sure, but he just must have been hammered at the time. So people were looking for him like, Andy, Andy, where are you? What's going on? And then he'd be saying, like, I'm stuck. I'm locked in. I can't get out. And in this bathroom, there is a very, very small window. I mean, really small. Like most human beings can't fit through it. But then a few moments later, we'd hear a thud of, and Andy had jumped out of the bathroom window. And this is on the second floor. Luckily, he was absolutely fine. He hadn't broken anything. It wasn't a tragedy. But something had been happening in his brain where he thought he was stuck. Maybe he got a little bit claustrophobic and he just jumped. He just jumped out of this tiny window. And now I'll always associate my 18th birthday with my mate Andy doing this. I'm like, what the hell was going through your mind, mate? What's up with you? But that happened, and I have many other similar party memories of us doing silly, reckless things where we could have got into trouble. We could have hurt ourselves. Boys will be boys, as they say, but there are many examples of this. When you're young and foolish, you make mistakes, and luckily, we didn't pay for them. So now I've told a little bit of a story. How about you? What stories, memories do you have of turning 18 or around a similar period of time?
I left home at 18,
Okay.
so you were having parties, I'd gone. Um, so lived on my own was really interesting at 18 because you think you know everything, you know nothing, you know? And oh, money was tight. I used to get paid in by a check, and I used to have to go and put it into a building site. I didn't have a bank, and then it took 4 working days for that to be able to get the cash, as I would draw it all out and then spend it like a drunken sailor. Apologies to any drunken sailors, but you know what I mean. I would spend it. And then I would be starving hungry and live on pot noodles for the next until I got paid again and I got a check. Um, Money was a real thing because I decided that I didn't want to be paying rent. This seemed like a silly thing to do. So I bought a house when I was 21.
Okay.
And
Well
as soon
done.
as you buy a house, that's all your money gone. I had to sell. I had an old car. The whole car had to go. I did without a car for a year, but I had a house. Didn't have any furniture. Slept on the floor, but I had a house. And it was huge, really. It was a big 4-bedroom, semi-detached with garage. And I was 21. I remember lying. I remember this as a memory. I remember lying in the living room of this house, spread eagled like that on my back. And I looked up and there was a screw holding the pelmet. That's the thing above a window that holds the curtains, makes it look
Mhm.
pretty. There was a screw. And I looked at it. I remember lying on the floor looking at that screw thinking, I own that. Is that screw there? I didn't know I owned it, but I own that screw. The bank owns the rest of the house, but I own that screw. Um, so buying a house at such a young age, that really changed me, made me grow up. That was an event rather than a memory. But
Mm. Well
yeah,
done.
yeah,
Because buying a house at 21, I'm 33 now and I still haven't bought a house. And maybe the way people think nowadays is slightly different, where people in the past would give a little bit more importance to getting on the property ladder and buying a house. But I think in the long term, it will have been a great decision because you
yeah,
save money, let's say, because usually your mortgage payments are lower than the rent that you have to pay. And then over a period of time, once you've paid off your mortgage, then you own this asset. And at that
mm,
point, you didn't just own the screw, you owned everything, I imagine.
yeah, yeah. And it
What
was
about
a
you?
time when, um, I mean, to me, it was a lot of money. I paid, I think it was £16,500, which is you couldn't buy a
So
car
jealous.
now for the same price. But at the time, I was earning maybe £700 a month. So in proportion, it was an expensive thing to do. Um, and I think I stayed there for about 5 years, and I sold it for 21,000. So I'd made thousands of pounds. And I bought the next house I bought was a detached house. I was still in my early 20s. I'd bought a detached house, and it was a brand new one, and I'd paid, I think I paid about £21,000 for it. And it was wonderful. When I look back, although it wasn't my biggest house, it was my favorite house I ever had. Um, and, but I only stayed in it for a year because an opportunity to buy an even bigger house came up. And I sold that house for 30,000. So I made £9,000 in a year. And I bought the next one for £42,000. That was the absolute limit of what I could borrow. I think I was about 30 years old by then. and it was the absolute limit of what I could borrow. I had to really, really go to lots of lenders to try and lend enough money to buy this house. Um, House sold out a few years later for 250,000. So,
I
you know,
mean,
I
it
got
sounds
in and out at just exactly the right times, really. And it was
it
it was
sounds
luck, nothing to do with me, really. Just luck.
sounds pretty professional and pretty successful, so don't put yourself down. I'm sure it was a lot to do with you. And in the meantime, during my 20s, whilst I've been working a little bit, traveling a little bit, having fun a little bit, but not really achieving many of these traditional milestones, you were way ahead. Uh, a property, a property a genius by this point.
No, absolutely not. It's a different time. Joe, it's just a different generation. Like you said, a different attitude. And I the youngsters now, I mean younger than you, and they're still living with the parents and they're in the 30s. And I'm thinking, I couldn't have done it. It would have driven me mad, you know? I needed that freedom. Um, but what opportunities do they have now when house prices now, a small terraced house is well over £100,000. I really feel sorry for them. I had the best opportunities of that type ever, really.
Mm, exactly. House prices now are through the roof, as people
They
would
are
say.
through the roof. Yeah.
They're really expensive. They're extortionate. But hey, congrats on all of your investments. And on that note, we're going to have to wrap it up. We're going to have to finish for today because I've got a class in a minute. I don't want to be late because I'm getting a bit of a bad habit for being fashionably late. 1, 2 minutes. Steve knows. Steve knows.
I
So
do. You are tardy. You're a tardy man.
it doesn't happen most of the time, I promise. Just certain times. So forgive me. And thank you, Steve, for joining us and sharing your memories. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful with all of these advanced words and phrases, phrasal verbs and idioms. And tell us in the comments, what are your biggest, most influential memories that you can think of from either when you were a little baby, at school, or becoming an adult? And
Even
that's it.
X-rated ones. We're interested in them. Send all your X-rated ones in the comments.
If you do, maybe we will the next time we get together.
I
Who
haven't
knows?
got any. I'm an innocent. I haven't got
I'm,
any.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. Anyway, that's it. Thank you, everybody, and see you next time.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.